Okay, I'm going live. Okay, now live.
Okay, so we've just gone live on our video stream. So I will say good evening to everybody who's watching live and who may be watching us in delayed time in an hour or a day or two. You can probably see that we have a full house here tonight, including our chairman, but unfortunately there's some technical gremlins preventing us hearing the chairman. So I will be chairing the meeting until such time as he gets himself sorted out, assuming he does. So without further ado, I will go to the agenda, if I can find that. Where are we? Here we go. And start by asking if there are any apologies for absence. It looks as if everybody's present, I think.
Don't forget parishioners' question time first, John.
Oh, we haven't got that on the agenda, have we?
Yes,
oh,
always right at the top.
Doesn't it? Yes. Thank you, Helen. Right. Okay. So, yes, we have got an opening parishioners' question time, which I've managed to skip over. Do we have any questions that have been submitted prior to the session? I know that we've got some queries or some input on the bad smells in the village. I'm proposing that we pick that up under item 6, correspondence. Other than that, has anybody seen anything on the email as to whether we've got any correspondence?
No, I've not received anything.
Right. Okay. In that case, we can always come back at the end if anybody wants to add anything. As usual, we've got another question time session towards the end. So if anybody watching thinks of anything during the course of the meeting, then drop us an email at chearsleypc@chearsley.com and we will endeavour to respond to it at the end of the meeting. So getting back to where I was a moment ago then, I don't think we have any apologies because I think we've got everybody here. The next item is declarations of interest. This is in accordance with section 30 and 235 of the Localism Act. Councillors to declare any personal, prejudicial or pecuniary interest in anything on the agenda. Are there any such interests to declare, please? No, none for me either. Thank you. We'll move then to approval of the minutes. These are the minutes of our meeting held on the 15th of March. They have been distributed and everybody had a chance to look at them. So can I firstly please, are we all content that they're an accurate record of the meeting? And if so, yep. Would somebody care to propose? Paul, thank you. Can I have a seconder to adoption? Julia, thank you. So they are signed. Helen, you'll have to, what do we do about signing? Are you just making a note of signatures for now?
I mean, obviously no minutes have been signed for the last year. So, you know, it's just the situation at the moment. There's nothing we can do about it. So whether they get signed in mass or whether there's an exemption for COVID, I don't honestly know, but I guess everyone's in the same situation.
Yeah, fair enough. I just wasn't sure whether you'd made any arrangements with Nick to sign copies or not, but sounds not. Okay, so we will just take them as adopted then. So going to matters arising, Helen, would you like to take us through the matters arising, please?
Yeah, so the first one was for yourself, John, to order some parish council ownership stickers, I think particularly with regards to sticking on the equipment that had been ordered for Chiltern Road flooding.
Yes, that's right. I did order them and I have got them and they're sitting on my desk here. I did actually drop an email to Nick Mole, is it?
Rob Mole.
Rob Mole, thank you. Sorry, Rob, if you're listening. To ask if I could drop in and hand them over to him or stick them on the signs, but I didn't get a reply. So either I used the wrong email address or it got lost in his massive email. So
I know they're right in the middle of lambing at the minute, so that might be why.
Why couldn't it? Yes. Well, I will follow up. I've got a constant reminder because they're sitting on the desk and I'd like to get them off the desk. So I will follow up with Rob in a while and check again. If I don't get a reply that time, I'll just check I've got his email address correct. But it was the one that I picked up from his correspondence to us, so I'm fairly sure it is. Okay, yes, please carry on, Helen.
So the next action point was regarding the dog fouling around near the Stockwell, and Julia was to contact Connor at Street Scene at Bucks Council to see if he had any advice around that.
Yeah, so I spoke to Connor, and because Street Scene actually only deal with the bins, and it seems like just the bins, so he actually referred me to environmental health. So I've been talking to them, and they haven't really. They've told me about some other councils and what they've done actually in Falkirk, but that does really involve. It seems to be encouraging other residents to be prepared and to pick up the dog mess. So I'm not sure if that really is.
Hold on, Nick. You're getting feedback from your dialed in call. You need to turn the audio off on the PC. Okay.
Okay, sorry, Julia, carry on. We're still getting some strange sound effects there.
Oh, God.
Shall I carry on?
Yes, please. Yeah, carry on. Nick tries to work out what best to do there.
Yeah, so the council in Falkirk have put in a scheme, which I'll circulate to you, but it seems to rely on other villagers or other residents picking up the poo they find, which probably isn't a terrible idea, but obviously these are the early stages. Also, there is a dog warden that we can have round. Obviously, the resources are very stretched, but they have said that maybe we can arrange for the dog warden to come round now and again, and I'm hoping that maybe if we can go down that route, that is a good halfway house and people can see that there's a dog warden around who would be able to initiate fines. Now, it's not perfect because unless they catch somebody in the act, then they can't find them. But I think in the same way that we've had the PCSOs and the police officers going around the village at certain times, just a presence now and again sends a bit of a message. And then if that doesn't get any results, then I think we should look at further options. What do you guys think?
Yep.
Okay, so any thoughts on that?
Yep, no, seems a sensible plan of action.
Okay, so I'll go back then to the environmental health and I'll ask if we can get put onto the rota for the dog warden and see what they come back with and see where we go from there.
Okay, thanks, Julia. That's a good step forward. I think it's. I think we just have to mention again. It's unfortunate that we have to go to these lengths. If there's anybody at all listening who's guilty, maybe of just occasionally not cleaning up after their dogs, we could only implore you once again. Please do so. We don't like that mess left around for others to have to put up with. And similarly, if anybody sees anybody, if you feel able to, it would be good to point out to others that the error of their ways. It's just one of these problems that we've got to keep on to try and get sorted out. But yes, let's follow up on the warden idea. That may help us. Thanks, Julia. Okay, Helen, yes, please.
I think has Nick raised his hand? Does Nick?
Sorry?
Oh, Nick's got the raised hand symbol on my screen. I didn't know if that was.
Oh, sorry, Nick. Were you trying to say something there?
He's on mute, so he's on mute on the dial-in. I can't unmute him. So if you want to say anything, Nick, you have to unmute the phone.
Oh.
Your phone is still on mute by the looks of it. Okay.
No.
Yeah.
Nick, so mute your sound on your Zoom.
Meeting. I'm just going to go to mute. Yeah, let's go. Hang on.
You can put comments in the chat on the PC. Okay, so hit chat and just type any questions in, Nick.
Shall I continue?
Yes, please. Yes.
So the next action was for you, John, to chase up the opening of the new Village Trust account.
Yes, so I did do that, and there has been progress. I don't claim it's because of my chasing up, to be perfectly honest. It's all Sheepy has been doing a fine job there, but we've now got to the stage where the bank have said that we can have an account, and we've all signed the necessary paperwork, signatories to it. So that's a big step forward, and I'm hoping that account will now be open very soon, and then the trust can actually start its work, including relieving the parish council of £6,500 or whatever it is. Okay, next one.
So the next one was just for me to add something onto the agenda, which has been done, and the next one is another action on me to have the telephone number for the elections office on the PC website, which has also been done.
You did, yeah.
And then the next one was for John Lewis to ask for permission from Rosedale, this is with regards to the Stockwell, to use their land in order to clear the bank area behind the Stockwell, rather than clearing it from Church Lane, to do it from the Haybrooks land.
Yes. So on that one, I think we'll be talking about the Stockwell later on. John, you're going to speak about the Stockwell, I think, when we come to it, aren't you?
Yes, I will, yeah.
Yeah. But just on this specific action, as we'll hear when we get to it, that has been overtaken by events now. So it wasn't done, but it doesn't need doing now. And we'll hear why later on, so it can just be closed.
Okay.
And then, sorry, go on, Helen, yeah, carry on.
Sorry. The final action was for Nick to prepare a report / presentation for the AVM.
Right. Well, I know he's been working on it, and he may have something to tell us if he's able to tell us anything at all. We'll wait with bated breath or not to see whether we get any input or not. Good. All right. Well, thank you for that. That completes the actions from the minutes. Item 5 on the agenda is planning. To note, there's no new applications. That remains the case, Paul?
Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Item 6, correspondence. Now, we've got the pollution in Chearsley, but before I come to that, is there anything else, Helen, that we should be mentioning?
Not that I'm aware of, unless anybody else has received anything.
Yeah, I can't remember. Can anybody else think whether we've had any other input other than that subject? Nobody remembers anything, so no, I don't think we have had.
No.
So as far as the correspondence is concerned, then on the air pollution, councillors are all aware of this, but let me just summarise it for the record. We had an email a couple of weeks ago from residents on the west side of the village commenting on rather severe air pollution that they'd noticed. They talked about smoke and chemical smells and farmyard smells, I think, possibly from fertiliser, strong ammonia smell. It was really quite a severe cocktail of experience that they were having. So in response to this, the parish council has issued some notes on its various communications channel to find out whether anybody else in the village is experiencing similar problems, and if so, what. In response to that, we have had, if I can find my note here. I printed it off. We've had we had the original email, or we had two emails originally actually from the same family. Subsequent to that, we've had 1, 2, 3, 4 people contacting us, one of whom has actually sent 2 emails with the second one a bit more information. And those people variously confirm the problem. Not all of them are detailed as to whether they're exactly the same sort of smells. 2 of them particularly point out the smell coming from the Lloyd's farm operation down by the bridge. And one of the follow-up ones from the family was talking about strong smoke smells. Now, obviously, the smells that are coming from the farm operation, we know about. They've been there a long time. And up to now, there doesn't appear to have been anything that we're able to do about it. That's not to say we won't try some more. As far as the smoke is concerned, we have been aware of a particular smoke problem in the ground off the land off Winston Road. That's been around on and off for a long time. I know, Martin, you logged that for a time, didn't you? I don't know whether you logged anything recently on that.
Nothing recently. As far as I was aware, the problem had gone away. I've not heard of any recurrence of it. And I do know the environmental people from Bucks Council did pay some visits, but I've not had any feedback from them as to what they found.
I see. Okay, so we don't know whether their visit was helped to make the problem go away or not, I suppose, really, do we?
Not really, no.
Interestingly, there was one of the comments that came in did also talk about an ammonia smell, and this was on the other side of the village to the original complaint. So it's difficult to know quite what that is. I think certainly my personal experience, others will say what they think of this, but the smells that come from the farm, to me, sometimes could be ammonia smells. Sometimes they're like a very foul farmyard smell. And sometimes they're like a mixture of all of those. And they are distinctly unpleasant when the wind sends them in this direction, that's for sure. And I think that that's one of the areas that we may well want to follow up in due course. But really, what we would like to do for everybody listening is to get as much information we can about the extent of this problem. We're very grateful to those folk who have written into us. And in fact, one of those people, I'm not naming names here, but one, and you'll know who you are, actually volunteered to go and ask other people what they thought and try and pull together a little catalogue of information. So that was very helpful, and yes, please, we would be grateful if you could do that for us. Can I just ask, before I sort of continue, is there any other input from any other councillor in terms of experience or what you think we might or should be doing about this?
John?
Keith, yes.
So one thing is, I'm quite close to one of the persons inputting, and occasionally, I've certainly smelt the ammonia-like smell, which presumably could be from fertilizer or whatever being put on the field adjacent to this end of the village, just going past Lammas Lane and across there, those nearest fields. The serious smoke that was from the sort of, I think it was burning of plastics. I haven't really been aware of that recently. And I think it's just important to point out, the original complainants have also been in touch with the Environmental Agency and have got some official forms that they're logging with them. So we should make sure, we're coordinating, rather than duplicating those efforts. Maybe if everyone communicates with the Environmental Agency in a coordinated way, with these forms, that's the best way to get it aggregated properly.
Yes, that's a good point, actually. If the folk concerned are listening, I certainly noticed you said you've got some forms now from the Environmental Agency. If they were just attachments and you're able to send them to us, then we could push them out for other people to use. And as Keith says, make sure we're all doing the job in the same way, which always helps to coordinate the information. Was there any other?
Martin's got his hand up. I don't know if you can see him.
Yeah, briefly, if I can just add to that. When I was dealing with the environmental people over the smoke problem, they made it very clear that anecdotal evidence is no use to them whatsoever. They can't do anything with that. They really need a reasonably detailed list of what the problem was, when it was observed, how long for, and that sort of thing. And that's what we were kind of coordinating on the smoke front. And I guess it's going to be exactly the same on this. But it does sound as if that's the kind of thing which is going on. But it's very easy to think that because somebody's mentioned a smell sometime in the past, that everybody knows about it and something's being done about it. And in fact, unless it does actually get written down and communicated to the environmental people, they won't and can't do anything about it.
Yes,
I've contacted the environmental people in the past, and they've sent people out to investigate and said that they couldn't find anything amiss. But it's one of those situations. It's like going to the dentist and your toothache goes by the time you get there. They need to be out there when the when the smell is at its worst. And it's unfortunate. It's over and beyond normal farmyard smells. We all live in the middle of the country and we expect farmyard smells, but the what's coming out of that business, unfortunately, is over and beyond that, which I think is very unfortunate for the whole village.
Yes, indeed. It's just worth saying, Ian, I don't know whether you would like to say anything. You did give us a very useful summary of the activities at Manor Farm, more or less making clear you thought it unlikely that the problem would be coming from there because of their farming practices.
Yeah, I think the smells I've noticed are one, silage, when they're feeding silage, and it, depending on the quality of the silage, can be slightly sweet, acidic, but can be pretty awful if it's not made well. But I wouldn't say that that was a major problem. The other is ammonia, and you've got, certainly when Grow Farm is transporting manure around, it's straw-based manure, it's not slurry. It's going to smell, but they're not doing it every day. And when it occurs, I think it's only for a day or two or a couple of days, on and off, infrequently. I was concerned that the email we got was talking about a constant problem, which I really think warrants further investigation.
Indeed so. Okay, well, thanks all for that. So I think the best way I can summarise this at the moment is that we do have an action or a request out to the village for more information on this. If I could just repeat that request to everybody who's listening, and perhaps you can pass the message on to your friends and neighbours. The more information you can give us about this, obviously the better. You have heard the need to gather it. We will, if we can, put out the forms so we can get a consistent format. And I guess I would also say that if there are people around who say they've smelt absolutely nothing, then that probably would be useful input as well, so we can make sure we're getting a balanced feel for the extent of this problem. So I suggest, unless anybody wants to offer any other thoughts, that's the way forward for now. We'll monitor things and we'll keep an eye on it and revisit certainly at the next meeting, if not before. Okay, thank you, everybody. Let's move on then to item 7 on the agenda, which is our finance report for the month. So can I hand over to you, Robert?
Thank you, John. The main issue really I want to talk through this evening is the results of the internal audit following the circulation of the draft accounts. I think the first point to make is the fact that, according to Jackie, because there wasn't a public face-to-face meeting last year's accounts have not actually been agreed and accepted. Given where we are and what's going on with all the pandemic, I find that a very strange state of affairs. And Helen, I don't know whether you'll find this with Shovington, but to me, it just doesn't seem reasonable. But I don't think there's anything we can do about it, to be honest. We've just got to accept it.
Everyone's going to be in the same situation, aren't they? Because I don't think any parish council will have met in person since last April. Well, since last March.
If they have, they shouldn't have done. I would suggest that, I circulated over the weekend a revised draft, which took into account all of the comments that Jackie had to make, or most of the comments that Jackie had to make. The key one was about the treatment of the village trust funds. And she said that the best thing to do is to make sure that actually, other than in the bank reconciliation, the village funds are excluded from the parish council account. So I've done that. It doesn't change the figures because, of course, it's just there in part of the reconciliation. So it doesn't change the structure of the accounts at all. The other thing, though, that she didn't like was that our liberal use of the word reserves. And so what I would say to the council is that in its own discussions, in its own thinking, it can call these figures whatever it wants to call them. But in terms of formal accounting documents, we've got to find a different option, a different choice of words. And I've actually, again, addressed that in the draft accounts. The third point you made is that she thinks there's a slight error in the fixed assets of about £30. I haven't been able to check that because, of course, she's got all the records at the moment. So when they come back, I will check that and then update as and when is necessary. The fourth point she makes, she's had a busy year this year. The fourth point she makes is that we need to formalise the basis on which we reimburse the clerk's salary. And following some discussions that we've had on the side, I'd like to ask the council to agree that we approach Sage, the accounting package software group, and see if they have anything that would meet our requirements. There are options available, but the problem is that some of them are really quite expensive proportionately into what we're actually paying in salaries. But we're advised that Sage is only about £100 a year, and if the council is prepared to support that approach, then we tick all the boxes as far as the internal audit is concerned, and also we keep our noses clean with HMRC. I don't really have any views on that, gentlemen. Jules.
I support it. Sounds pragmatic.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
Is it, I don't know if this is feasible or not, but is it feasible to join with a couple of the other parish councils to do a Sage package for the clerk's salary amongst the 3 councils, or not? I don't know.
I don't think Sage would accept that. I don't know, Jules, to be honest. But
it's not necessary. It's not necessary. You'll still end up paying the same. You need your own portal on it.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so proposal is that we use Sage. Can I just see confirmation by hand, please, that everybody is agreeable to that? Okay, so that's carried, and I think perhaps the action on that, Helen, is if you could make some inquiries on how to do that, please.
Okay.
Now, unless there are any questions on the actual information in the accounts, excuse me, I'd like to make another suggestion. That is, the council needs to decide whether to approve the accounts subject to the amendment on fixed assets that Jackie has identified, if necessary, or it delays approval until the next meeting, or the third option is that it delegates approval of the accounts to the chair and vice chair so that we can move forwards.
Third option.
I think
Any
I
other
agree with the
thoughts?
third option as well.
Third option.
Yeah.
Okay, so can I just take it, if we adopt that option, that nobody has any problems with the accounts other than Robert sorting out that query? Everybody's happy with what they've seen?
Yeah.
Yep.
Very well. So we'll take them as almost approved, and Nick and I will do the final approval once Robert irons out that little wrinkle for us.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much.
Does that cover off them being, obviously the auditors, when it goes to the external auditors, they're very, very picky about it being approved at a meeting. Does that cover that off? Because obviously...
I think the approval will just need to be confirmed at the next meeting, Helen,
okay,
so that you've got something to write in the box, as it were.
okay, that's nice.
Everyone's
All those
comfortable with that.
phone calls in the summer from them.
Yeah, I think that's the way to do it. In fact, it sounds as if we need to formally put on record approval of last year's as well, Robert, from what you just said.
Okay, so I'll just say that we've agreed to delegate the approval of the accounts to the chairman and vice chairman, and then at the next meeting that can be confirmed.
Yeah,
that would be fine.
The only other point that I want to mention, which is going off the subject completely, is that we've just received this week the VAT refund for last year. So we're another £2,000 to the good. And that's all I've got to say.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Are there any questions, queries, comments on any of that? No, looks in good order. Thank you very much. The only thing I would add is just for the record that I think you will all have seen that I sent out today a copy of our our agreed budget for next year, for the year we're just starting. The only change to the previously published version was that I updated the opening balance, because previously it was an estimated figure, and of course now we have the exact figure. So it was really just to make sure that everybody's got a copy of exactly what we think we're going to do this year. Although, as I said, that will almost certainly change as the year goes by, because that's the way of the world. Right. If that's sorted on finance, then I'll move us on to item 8, which is report from councillors attending meetings and outside organisations. Is there anybody that, any meeting that anybody would like to report on, please? John?
Yes, thank you, John. Tomorrow I had in my diary the Transport for Bucks Transport Focus Group, which is a meeting that I have represented Chearsley at for a while now, and we just had a note today that it's been postponed until after the election. I was a little bit disappointed because I think, as you all know, I wrote you last week. We took a brief, well, indeed all the representatives on it's a focus group, so it's an opportunity for exchange of ideas on Transport for Bucks, and they were having a look at how good or bad or they were at resolving problems, and in particular the reporting service, the Fix My Street survey, which is the standard way of alerting, be it a pothole, be it a overhanging tree or whatever, to Transport for Bucks. And as you will have seen from the report that I circulated last week, we you know, we try to keep an eye on how things have gone for the last 4 or 5 months. And I hope we've fed back to them all. Well, we have fed back to them. There would have been an opportunity to discuss it tomorrow, our views on the Fix My Street system, which is, it's fine as it is as a reporting system, but it simply doesn't have the wherewithal to resolve complicated problems. If it's a single pothole or a broken drain cover, fine, it's reported. Usually it's works pretty well. And there have been delays in recent months, obviously, because of the very heavy workload associated with floods. But I think the key message that from me, certainly to the Parish Council and also to Transport for Bucks, is that it's absolutely vital for us to keep a good dialogue with our local area technician, which gives us an opportunity to explore issues, you know, that are complicated and need quite often not single solutions, but, you know, really need to be discussed properly. And I think what I was able to report is that we haven't quite done it yet. It's been delayed because of resources, but we do seem to have solved 2 long-term drainage problems. At least we have the assurance from our local area technician that the certainly the drainage issue at the bottom of Lower Green Lane has now been rectified. There is now a problem further up, but that's a relatively straightforward one. And we are hopefully going to have a solution very soon on the Church Lane drainage problems, which for years have caused build-up of silt and just haven't been addressed properly. And I think I also said in my report that it's not just, I think we have a very good LAT, Colin Wilford, who is very responsive. He's been under huge pressure the last few months, but I've certainly feel we have an excellent relationship with him now and a good basis to resolve problems. And certainly I've also valued the input from local residents on Lower Green Lane, you know, Anthony Adams and Darren Sampson, local residents who've had to live with the problem. And similarly on Church Lane, where the Derek Allen, his input has been absolutely crucial. And I can assure you he's well listened to. So the message from me is, yes, let's keep using Fix My Street. There were 1 or 2 specific improvements we said, which was giving a much more precise information on advance notice of when they're coming to repair problems. We've had some issues in the village recently about that they just have arrived, or we had an indication they were coming in the next 10 days, and lo and behold, Monday morning they arrive, and you know, if we'd had specific advance notice, that would have helped. But I think the key thing is that you know, let's encourage our parishioners to use the service, to report problems. They should keep us informed. A little bit, I think, akin to the discussion we had on smells and the environment, that please use the facility, because sometimes a little bit more noise helps. But do keep the Parish Council informed, because we have an excellent working relationship now with Colin Wolford, and within his ability and the resources available to him, I think we've had 2 very good case studies of how that sort of cooperation works. So that was going to be my message tomorrow, but they have had a copy of the report now. Perhaps I could just finally mention that, and I know it's been a topic that has been much in the mind of a lot of our parishioners. It does seem we haven't got the Aylesbury Road problem sorted yet, but we've had assurances now that the surface is going to be attended to. But just as importantly, Colin, and a number of us met with him last week, is going to have a look at the longer term drainage issues, and both issues will be addressed. And hopefully in the next few months, we will see not a short term patch, but a long term resolution of that problem. And again, I very much can't emphasize enough it's not a Fix My Street. That's not the vehicle for it. It's good, solid conversation, understanding that's generated from a close relationship with our LAT. And of course, if we need to go higher, and our chairman has done so, certainly on Aylesbury Road, that will continue to be necessary. So let's keep using the surface. They can sharpen it up, no question about that. But let's make sure as a council we keep very close to our local area technician, who is currently Colin Wolford.
Okay, thank you, John. I think we should go on record as saying that's a great job you've been doing there with Fix My Street. I know you've been putting a huge amount of effort into liaising with them and feeding back to them and chivying them along. And I don't doubt that any improvements they make are going to be to a very large degree down to your efforts. So many thanks for that. And similarly on your efforts with the drains and your contacts with Colin Wolford, which also have paid huge dividends for us in recent weeks.
Hopefully will.
Indeed, yes. Did anybody else want to come in at all on that subject? Keith?
No, just concur with what you said. Well done, John. Yeah, excellent.
Okay. So we're still on meetings attended. Keith, did you want to report on something?
Yep, just briefly, I attended the Haddenham and Waddesdon Community Board's reflections meeting where they're asking for feedback. There were a couple of feedback sessions organised and I attended one of them and basically gave very positive feedback to the representatives. It was Carol Burslem, Kate Walker, Katie MacDonald, and said, I felt, it had improved our engagement with the county council initiatives. Also, there are lots of grant opportunities that have come to light through those meetings as well. And indeed, I've taken advantage of that for the village hall, for example. And we get to see what other local parish councils are putting applications in for in terms of funding and grants. So again, really, really useful from a communication and cross-pollination of ideas. So so I gave them, and a very positive feedback, and also Elaine Hassel, who's been one of the main organisers running all these meetings, has been really, really helpful and very, very useful, both outside and within the meeting. So again, gave that feedback. So yes, a thumbs up from Chearsley was what I gave them. There may be some official minutes circulated. I'll have another look for those. I circulated my very short report. I'll circulate the minutes if they've actually come out. They're sometimes a bit tardy. That was it for me.
Okay, thank you, Keith. Again, some good input there, keeping us abreast of what's going on in that area and making sure people know what we feel about things. Any comments or questions for Keith? Okay, is there anything else on external meetings that anybody would like to talk about? If there's nothing else, I will just do a brief update on the one that I've attended, which is the Freight Steering Group. Again, it's a community board group, one of several that we're representing, that we are represented on. In this particular case, I actually chair that group, and we held our fourth meeting back on the 6th of April this year. It was not very well attended. I was a bit disappointed to see. The numbers have been increasing every meeting from the previous so far, but this took a bit of a backward step. We've got a fairly standard agenda now. If I just pick out some of the highlights from the report here. One important thing is that Elaine, again, this is Elaine Hassel that Keith mentioned, also coordinates this meeting. She's managed to set up a public page now on the community board website. So we will be publishing documents from the Freight Group on that page so they can reach a wider audience, which will be helpful, I think. We've had discussions about the extent to which we can get planning authorities involved with controlling freight traffic from building sites. Elaine's got an action on that, but there's no progress at the moment to report on that one. We've been talking about doing coordinated traffic surveys. This was kicked off by the efforts that John has put in over the last few years on the Chearsley survey. And Edgecott actually came forward at this meeting and indicated an interest to join in. So we've got another recruit there. That's very good. And we've also inquired of TFB, that's Transport for Bucks, who look after the road network in the county, whether they do any traffic measurements themselves. And it turns out that they do. I just heard today from Elaine that they've responded positively on that. And the challenge now is to find out exactly what it is they measure, and more importantly, who gets the results and whether we can get our hands on them. So watch this space. We're trying to identify local freight operators to speak to them. We haven't made any progress on that. We did find somebody willing to go and do a list of all the companies based at Westcott. Obviously, that's the source of much of the freight traffic that we get through the village. And so if we can find the people based there operating heavy vehicles, that will be a big help. We talked a bit about conversation with the farming community, which Cuddington are particularly keen to move forward. I think they suffer a lot there with heavy farm traffic through Cuddington. And despite one or two promises, we don't seem to have managed to get any input from the farming community so far. So if there's anybody from the farming community listening, we would love to hear from you and chat to you about your business needs. Investigating whether the Heritage Department had any interest in this was suggested, but it turns out they haven't. They're mainly concerned with planning issues rather than traffic issues. And finally, the liaison with the Haddenham freight project, which is, sorry, not the Haddenham, the Waddesdon freight project, which has been led by Graham Hillary and is looking at what we can do at introducing traffic zones across the county that might ultimately lead to some sort of heavy goods vehicle control measures. That is some way off, but again, we're trying to get hold of Graham. He's had a few difficulties focusing on this work, I believe, of late. So the sooner we can get back in contact there and get that moving, the better. So that was pretty much it. The next meeting is on the 8th of June at 3 o'clock. So again, if anybody's listening, either from our parish council or from any others who would like to join in, we'd love to see you there. Okay, let's now then move on to item 9, which is subcommittee decisions for ratification. I don't think we've got any of them, have we? Can anybody think of anything? No, doesn't look like it. No, none of that. So I'll move on to item 10, which is report from our officers. So let's start with Anthony. Anything on footpaths, Anthony?
Not particularly. We're still progressing with the two kissing gates behind Chearsley Hill House, and I hope to have some pricing on that fairly shortly to see what they can do. The Ramblers are going to hopefully come back with something on that, and then it's just getting more permissions where we can. I don't know if there's any movement on the stile going just off Church Lane, the one that goes in where we had all the problems with the height of the stile. I don't know, that obviously hasn't been changed yet. I don't know if they are going to change that. I know you spoke to Johnson. I don't know when that might happen.
Yeah, so I mean, I can just briefly comment on that. That was one aspect of the conversation I had with Rosedale some weeks back that I mentioned at the last meeting, and she did promise that she would do something about it. She wasn't aware that its height exceeded regulations. She accepts now that it does, and she did promise to get it dealt with, although at the time she said that her farm manager who does these jobs was unwell, so that's probably why it hasn't received any excuse me, why it hasn't received any attention. So I will
6'10" farm manager.
Sorry, say again.
The 6'10" farm manager.
And the rest, I reckon, yes.
The farm manager is extremely busy at the moment with calving cows
Yes.
and lambing ewes.
Yeah.
So also very busy.
Yeah, that makes good sense.
Yeah, that's all from me, really.
Okay, thank you, Anthony. Ian, anything for us?
Yeah, just briefly, following the volunteers clean up around the horse chestnut tree in the on the junction there, I've ordered and have delivered the lures for the moth traps for this year, and I spoke with Jay, our new flagman, and he will do the honours up the ladder, and sometime this weekend we'll get the traps put up again and replace the lures every 6 weeks or so, and I'll count up the moths to see how many we get this season. Hopefully there'll be fewer than last season, but I think overall most people agree that the amount of leaf miner moth was less than had been previously last year. So that work will continue.
Okay, thank you very much, Ian. Yes, that judging by the number of captured moths or grubs last year, we probably saved the tree from some grief, and hopefully we can save it from a bit more this year.
Yeah.
For anybody listening who's not familiar with this, this is all about putting out pheromone traps in the trees to trap. It's the larva, I think, isn't it, Ian, that we trap?
Yeah, no, we took the adult males.
Oh, the adult males, sorry.
Yeah.
So if anybody else has got horse chestnut trees in their garden and would be interested in getting involved with this little exercise, I don't think it's desperately expensive, and it's a small thing that we can do to try and help our horse chestnut trees, then do come through to the parish council, and I'm sure Ian will be very happy to provide guidance as appropriate.
Yeah, there is a small article from last year on the Chearsley blog spot, I think. Keith,
Okay.
Is it still there?
It will be. Nothing gets deleted. I could resend the link round.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well,
if anyone's interested, please contact me.
Very good. Right. Thank you then, Ian and Anthony. Did anybody else want to say anything else on those subjects from the officers? No. In that case, we'll move on to item 11, tree and verge matters. Paul.
Very little to report, actually. Just to confirm that Tom Audley will be starting at the beginning of May to do the verges to supplement, inverted commas, the work that the council will be doing. But I think the work we did towards the end of last year has paid dividends, because it's all looking quite neat now, and I think getting on top of it very early in the year should work very well for us. Ian and I are due to have a meet up just to see exactly what needs doing, and try and prioritise. And perhaps I could just throw out a question to any parishioners that feel if there are any specific areas that we need to be looking at in terms of the streaming program. Initially, please let us know, because obviously we can be directed to different parts of the village as appropriate. But he will be starting beginning of May, as we agreed and budgeted for. Apart from that, there's nothing else to report, which is good. I don't know whether Ian's got anything to add at all.
Nothing further.
No. Okay, brilliant.
Okay, thanks, Paul. So really, we're just getting that season underway, aren't we? And lots of work there to be done during the course of the year, I'm sure. And we've got great hopes for getting the verges around the village looking just a little bit brighter and smarter as a result of the new approach we're adopting. So we look forward to that. So where are we now? So item 12 is an update of the meeting between Nick and our MP Greg Smith and Network Rail, and this is on the subject of that dreadful metal palisade fencing that has been erected all along the side of the railway. So I know that Nick would have loved to say something on this himself, but unusually for our chairman, he's unable to speak. The outcome of those discussions was, I believe, Greg Smith actually getting in contact directly with Network Rail, and we have received a letter now from Network Rail agreeing that they are going to not only, well, they already have done a lot of painting of the white fencing black, so that job was already being done, but they've now spotted that actually adopting black fencing in the first place alongside railways is a good idea, and that's going to be their policy, certainly in this area, which is a great development. It's a shame they have to put this up at all in many respects. Many people feel it serves no useful purpose at all, but Network Rail tell us that they're constrained by regulation to do it. So we have to accept that that's the case. And they've also said that they are willing to absorb themselves without trying to charge back local authorities like ourselves. They're willing to absorb the slightly higher cost of the black fencing relative to the white fencing. So I guess we should be grateful to Network Rail for that concession on their part. So that was a good result. It was the result of some lobbying by certainly Mike Haybrook in the village. I know Mike got onto that early on, and Nick followed up, and using our good links with our MP, we got a very positive result, which just shows what we can achieve in Chearsley when the chips are down. Did anybody want to say anything more about that one before I move on?
Is the crossing, I haven't been up to the railway crossing, but is it still closed?
No, I've been in touch with him, but now he's on his tractor. He probably won't pick up any messages, that's all.
Paul,
You've got your speaker on.
I'll mute Paul, it's all right.
Sorry, Keith, I don't know. I haven't been there
all the palaver about fitting the lights for the railway crossing, and then drivers seeing the lights has resulted in, when I last went up there, which admittedly was maybe several days ago, so it's not current. There was a big padlock across the gate there, so you couldn't actually get through to Crendon. So has that actually been reopened yet? Because
it wasn't yesterday, Keith.
Yeah, so that still is a bone of contention, because after all, people have been happily using that crossing for years and years and years, and now, because the lights they fitted don't operate in the manner they expected, they've now padlocked the gate, and so you'd have to climb over it, but it expressly tells you not to. So I think a lot of people are a bit upset about that.
Yes, I think it's something we might consider following up. Unfortunately, they've got a closure order that extends, I think, till June or something, haven't they?
Yeah.
Which they can kind of use as they see fit. But I agree, it seems to be a nonsense that there's not been the slightest hint of any problem or accident or difficulty with pedestrians using that crossing. And now their apparent safety measures has resulted in creating a hazard for train drivers, which has resulted in it being closed.
Yep.
You couldn't make it up, you really couldn't. Yeah, maybe, Nick, that's something you and I can chat about and see whether we can call on Greg's good offices again on that one, because, yeah, okay, thank you. Right, where am I on the agenda now? Oh yes, item 13, agreement to submit a nomination to register the bell as an asset of community value. So the community value scheme is one run, I think, by Buckinghamshire. Is anybody leading on this one before I start talking about it?
You're welcome to do it, John. I mean, the only thing that's happened is I've submitted the nomination, and as part of that, they just would like the parish council to agree at the meeting that everyone's happy with the nomination that I've submitted. I mean, I know we all agreed it by email, but I think they just like a vote and an agreement in the minutes that everyone's happy to go ahead with the nomination.
Right. Okay, so we have sort of talked about this informally. It's a way we can show our support for the bell. Does anybody want to talk about it, or are you all happy just to say, yes, we agree to doing that? Can I just see a show of hands of agreement then, please? Okay, thank you. That's unanimously carried. So if you could press on with that one then, Helen.
Yeah, thank you.
Now then, the council annual report, although it's got my initials against them, I put this on for Nick's benefit. He's cleverly got out of it by not being able to say anything. Nick, are you able to indicate whether you've got made any progress on this, or what your plans are? Sorry, this is one that I really can't fill in on, so I'm not sure where Nick's got to on it. I'll tell you what, we'll come back to that. Yeah, okay, Nick. Drop me a note on the chat bar, will you, Nick, and then I'll come back to it.
I think he might be indicating that he can't go on chat, but I'm not sure.
No, he's been on the chat bar. He's dropped.
I know he has.
Email.
Yes. Okay. All right. So I'm not sure about the annual report. So what I can say is this this item was about trying to prepare a report that the parish council would be able to present at the annual village meeting. The idea being that if we could get a written report out beforehand, then we don't need to spend a huge long time. The parish council doesn't need to spend a long time taking up an annual village meeting time, and leave more space for others by publishing the report in advance. That was the thinking behind it. There is a question mark over the AVM anyway, but I think I'm going to leave that until item 20, the next meeting, rather than branch off on it now. So I'll pick up some comments on that when we get to item 20. Elections. Paul, you asked for elections to be put on. Did you have anything you wanted to say particularly? You're on mute at the moment, by the way.
Paul, you need to unmute.
You're on mute, Paul.
Sorry, I muted you. Let me actually. No, it's not letting me do.
I'll do it. There we go. Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry. Yeah, no, I asked for it to be put on the basis that we would remind people that they need to vote. But those that aren't aware, it's because of the numbers that have been put forward or put themselves forward for consideration. It's been an unelected, what's the word I'm looking for?
Uncontested.
Uncontested election, not an unelected to contested. So the purpose of putting on there is obviously now gone. So I don't know whether there's any comments there about the requirement for the additional volunteer and the process to be followed there. I can't remember exactly what it was. Perhaps I'll pass over to John Lewis.
Yeah, sorry, Paul, I tuned out what you were saying there, reading a post. I do apologise. Could you just repeat that?
It wasn't that interesting.
Just an update on the process for the.
It's just
right. Sorry, I do.
We have 6 people. We have 7 spaces, and there's a process there for finding an additional councillor.
Yes, there is. So yes, very appropriate to mention that. So the we do need one additional councillor now, in addition to the 6 that put their names forward, who are automatically appointed. And the process for doing that, which we will kick off, I think, fairly quickly, is firstly to post a notice to the effect that there is a vacancy, And the method of filling it is by co-option. So the existing council, i.e. those that have been appointed through the election process, they will co-opt a suitable additional person to make us up to the required 7. So firstly, we will publish a notice inviting anybody who would be interested to put their names forward. And when we have those names, we will then look at the applicants, if I can describe it that way, and take a view on who we think would be an appropriate person to fill the vacancy. It is entirely in the gift and the power of the council to decide the appropriate person. We don't have to consult further on who it should be. There's no sort of vote or anything now. The village has had an opportunity to vote, and we only had the 6 nominations, so it now becomes a parish council responsibility to make up its number. So I think that my suggestion would be that we kick that process off fairly quickly, and I might suggest that we have one of our informal sessions to discuss exactly how we go about it. Helen, is there anything else that I should have mentioned in that context that you're aware of in terms of filling that vacancy?
I emailed Carol at Carol Burslem at Balk. I think it was on Friday, but I've not heard back yet, just to ask what the procedure was. I don't know at what point we're allowed to publish the vacancy notice, whether it's immediately or whether we have to wait till after the 6th of May. I don't know, because I've not done an election before, so I've kind of asked her what is the procedure, but as I said, I've not heard back yet, so hopefully I'll get a bit of clarity. But no, I'm sort of in agreement with you. We publish a vacancy notice and it's filled by co-option, and I think normally there's a clause when you co-opt a councillor when it's not in a sort of election year, that if any member of the parish asks for a by-election, there can be a by-election, but because this is a co-option following what would have been an election, that isn't in there. It's definitely just done by co-option. But I'm just not sure on the timescales whether we can do it now or whether we have to wait till after the 6th of May, unless you know any more than I do, John. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I don't. And I think that's a great question to ask. Thanks, Helen. So as soon as we get the answer to that question back, if you let us all know, then we can work out how to go about filling this post.
And I think I'm right in saying that everyone will have to sort of refill out the, I'm trying to remember the names of the forms now, but sort of to disclose any interests, and the, there's 2 forms, isn't there? I forget them. There's the disclosure of interests, and what's the other one?
I think it's the acceptance of office, isn't it?
That's it, declaration of acceptance of office, that's the one. So I think those have to go out to everybody. So I'll work out what we need to do for that. And I think they all need to be filled out sort of prior to the May meeting.
Yes, I think in the past we've filled them out actually at the first meeting, but if you were able to get them out to us in advance.
Yes, I think until they're filled out, they can't, the meeting, people can't be councillors or something. There's some rule, isn't there?
That's right, yeah, precisely. That's why I think if we can do it in advance, it would be as well. I mean, maybe the process would be for you to email them to us to print, sign and post them back to you or something like that.
Yeah. Okay, I'll
sign electronically, but anyway, you'll work out the process for us.
Yeah, I'll get that worked out before May meeting. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then I was going to suggest that I don't know what you all feel about it. As soon as we've got that bit of process sorted out, we might get together for an informal session just to have a chat about how we want to tackle the year. Certainly we will have Angela with us for that session. We'll welcome her to the council as soon as she's signed the papers. And just generally talk about the year, whether there's anything we want to change from what we had planned to do, just to get us started so that we can go into the first parish council meeting firing on all cylinders, as it were. How do you feel? Would that be a useful informal meeting to have?
Yeah.
I think I'm seeing general agreement. So as soon as I get an okay from Helen to the timings for all this stuff, then I'll chat to Nick and we'll get something out to everybody regarding that meeting. Okay, so that's all on elections. There is one other little item that follows, but I'm going to leave that until item 19. Next, the impact of the emergency powers provision. So this is another fairly significant development. Again, for the sake of anybody watching us online not aware, our ability to hold our parish council meetings in the way we have been of late, i.e. by video conference, we've been able to do that because of a provision in the emergency powers that the government took out 12 months ago. And those emergency powers covered a massive wide range of things that the government's been up to in the last year. But one little footnote to it all was, hey, by the way, parish councils can hold their meetings remotely. Those powers were renewed about a month ago by the government because they were time limited. And although many of the provisions were renewed, the provision for parish councils to hold meetings remotely were not. And apparently that wasn't oversight, it was a quite deliberate policy. Which means that in order to meet legally, we have to meet in person from the May meeting. I think those powers expire on, I don't know, around the 8th of May or something like that, close to the election date, I know. So for me, a couple of questions arise. One is, what arrangements are we going to make in the hall for holding a meeting in compliance with all required COVID safety measures? And to what extent can we or must we invite public participation in those meetings? Now, I've no idea on the answer to that second question. I don't know whether anybody else, Helen in particular, has got any information on that.
There's not really been anything published. I mean, I would assume we'll have to do some sort of risk assessment for the hall. I think it's almost one of these things where everyone's almost waiting for something to be issued from BAL, but we're still waiting. Nothing's come about yet. Because there was obviously there was a call for evidence, wasn't there? I think, but I think that's open until, is it June, where people could put their views in as to what they thought about this. Obviously, that is going on until June, and the powers to meet remotely, I think, stop on, I think, like you say, about the 7th or 8th of May. So no, nothing's really been sent out to us. We've not received any further advice, but I'm hoping that will be, it will be soon. Yeah, so Nick's just said, can we push BAL to get an answer? Yeah, I mean, perhaps I'll chase Carol tomorrow on the vacancy and ask that. Yeah, I can certainly ask the question from Carol, because it's it's very soon, isn't it?
It is, yes, and obviously we need to publish how this is going to happen, and also we need to, again, it's a subject probably of an informal discussion between us, what arrangements we're going to have in the hall. Even if there's no public in there, we've got to make sure that we've arranged things safely for ourselves. Yeah, Julia.
What is the date of the next meeting? Is it after the May 17th when the regulations change?
Yes, it is. Yeah, I think the regulations change. I think they change on the 7th of May and the meeting's on the 17th. Okay. It's definitely, I think it's definitely by the end of the first week in May that the regulations have stopped.
No, for like the rule of 6 and things like that, because
that's
usually the lights aren't turned on, so I'm very sorry about that. But would we be going against the COVID regulations anyway by having 7 of us meeting inside, regardless of whether we had any members of the public as well?
So my assumption on that is that, and it is only an assumption, it'd be worth checking that this, Helen, this would be treated in the same way as employment. There's nothing to constrain people from going to work, and I suspect this wouldn't be considered leisure or personal. It would be considered covered by business regulations.
It would be.
Okay, well, all we can do is make inquiries. We'll Nick, perhaps you and I can have a chat about how we might sort this out, and then we'll all have a general conversation and work out the best way of dealing with it. But it's going to be difficult. On top of all of that, we have, of course, talked about potentially continuing to live stream the meetings even when they're held in person. But Keith, you and I have talked about this, but we haven't made any progress on how it might happen. So I guess we're in no position to make any commitments at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be fairly simple, just have a sort of USB camera or something on a tripod. So I think it's pretty straightforward if we choose, if everyone is happy to do that.
Yes. Okay. Well, we can't decide on that now, but I just mention it in case anybody listening were thinking of asking the question. We have thought of it, and we'll consider it. Right. I think that's about all on that subject. So we're now on to our second parishioners' question time. Has anybody seen whether we've had any questions in from anybody?
Yeah, it's not a question, but an update really from our parishioner that raised the initial issue on the smells in the village, saying we've listened with interest to your comments in the meeting this evening with photographs of Lloyd's farm from last year with smoke rising from behind the barns. This was a constant issue, and we found that when the wind came from the west-southwest direction, we could smell the burning strongly in Shups Lane. As mentioned, we have some new data sheets, and we can let you have one copy. Unfortunately, they are paper copies, not attachments. Obviously, we can copy those and scan them. Nigel from the Department of Environment was very helpful and very pleased that the PC are involved with this issue. He mentioned that he had experienced a similar set of problems in his village in Oxfordshire, including residents' use of weed killers and pesticides, and an increase in the incidence of bonfires, possibly due to lockdown and increased garden activity. His advice was that an encouraging clean air campaign on his PC's newsletter was all it took to really help. In his experience, this approach reaped huge benefits. Maybe it would be appropriate to include a copy of the data sheet for residents to use over a 2-week period. Obviously, the advice there regarding the clean air campaign, I suspect, would be very much picked up by parishioners, but whether that would extend to the farming community, obviously, is another issue completely. But it's that's some feedback anyway from.
Okay, thanks.
Earlier in the meeting.
And thanks to those folk who have.
And thank you for the interaction. It's appreciated really that we obviously doing things as a parish council, but it's nice to know that people are listening in and be interacting with the meeting. So hello.
Yes, and if you can arrange to get one of those paper forms to us, as Paul says, we can certainly get that scanned and distributed to anybody who wants copies. Excellent. Right, I assume there was no other comments from anybody on the...
There was just one question about, which I assume John Howard may answer after the meeting, question about is the Chearsley business directory up and running, which I thought we'd fairly well publicised it, but I think that went out on all the channels. So
it certainly is. John, do you want to comment on that?
Well, it was. It's a simple answer. I put a note on the Facebook page. Keith did a report. You, I think, also did your mailing list. So I don't know who this.
The answer is yes.
So the answer is yes. Whoever it is, if they were on have access to any of those channels, they'll hear about it. Otherwise, there's not an awful lot more we can do.
Yeah, they need to certainly be subscribed to one of the forms of communication.
We used every available channel open to us, but I realise that's online and not everybody. Well, whichever parishioner has raised this is online because have they just sent an email through now or
yes, just now.
Yeah. Well, we launched 2 or 3 weeks ago. I mean, one of the things that I am doing, and I will be in touch with everybody about, is that we want to assess the reaction to it. I think when we decided to do it, we agreed we'd give it a try, evaluate it. I've certainly had a couple of suggestions on how it might be modified, extended, and so on and so forth. But rather than get into that in detail now, I'd suggest that I'll set up a review. I'd also be interested, Keith and John, to hear whether we know how many people have actually logged in to have a look at it on the either via Chearsley blog or the Facebook page, or indeed direct with the Parish Council website. Would we? That obviously would be an indicator of interest, if I can put it that way.
Yes, I'm not at all sure we can get those stats from the website. We might be able to. I'm not sure. It's a good point, John. I'll follow up whether we can, and if we can, have a look and see what the answer is.
But what I think we should do is some sort of formal canvassing, just asking people for opinions, and we can, as I say, we've got a couple of, we've already had some, quite interesting feedback on how it might be extended, and let's conduct that and see how we go. But I'd be very interested to, as you say, Keith, we should encourage these people to subscribe, because if they're not subscribed, then they're to one of the 3 online communication channels that we have, then it makes it rather difficult. But
I may have just missed it.
Yeah.
Okay, so thanks for that. So 1 or 2 things there. If you're listening to this and you weren't aware of the directory, or you were and you didn't think it had been published, it has. It's available on the Parish Council website. So if you look up Chearsley Parish Council on your preferred browser, it will take you to the website, and you need to look under the Chearsley Village tab, and under there you will see Chearsley Business Directory. And again, if anybody listening doesn't get our mailings or information about what the Parish Council is doing, you've got a number of options. You can either go to the blog, where you can sign up to receive everything that's published on the blog. You can sign up to receive information via Facebook, sign up to the Facebook page. Just email us at chearsleypc@chearsley.com, and we can tell you how to do that, or do it for you. And if you would like to receive our occasional emails that we send out to our distribution list, then again, email us at chearsleypc and give us your permission to put you on the list, and you will be added and receive future mailings. Okay. Now then, where are we? Items for information. Let's just go round in the order I have everybody on the screen. So I'll start. Keith, anything?
The only one is, I think I've had a note through saying the community speed watch can restart, but there's more paperwork involved to get covered by TVP, Thames Valley Police insurance scheme, which they're offering FOC free of charge. But everyone who's partakes in it will have to sign a form. So there's some added paperwork that needs to be completed and signed before kicking that back off again. So I haven't done anything about it yet, since we're still not fully out of the pandemic, and going around getting things signed is not the easiest at the minute.
Okay, well, it's good we can get going on that again once we can get some focus on it. Thanks for that, Keith. John?
Yes, John, you referred to the Stockwell restoration project. So just, I think, a quick update for everybody.
Thank you.
The project is very definitely up and running. We haven't actually done anything yet, but we've been doing a lot of homework, and I'd like to pay particular thanks both to Derek Allen, who is leading the project, and to Ian Houseman here, who've we've really been sort of chewing over the ideas. Just to briefly summarize where we are, we've identified 4 stages to the project, and the first one really is one of vegetation, and first off, it will be the clearing of brambles behind the stockel, and we're not quite sure when we're going to achieve that. Ian is going to have a very close look at the brambles above the stockel just to check for any nesting birds, and if there are nesting birds, then we will have to postpone it. Simple as that. But if he's comfortable that there aren't, then we can move to that first phase, and that will certainly be required before we start any of the other major construction works. We had a very good meeting, as I mentioned last week, with Colin Wilford, who's given us assurances that the drainage problems the drains in Church Lane have not been functioning correctly probably for 20-25 years. And we've identified the two pipes, or we haven't identified them. We think we know where they are. And Colin is going to bring a team, hopefully, he said, in the next 2 or 3 months to sort those problems out. The fact the drains are not working properly means the pond becomes a repository for silt, and the whole that is a crucial element. But Bucks Council will be addressing that. They've given us reassurances, and they even said if necessary they will put in a supplementary pipe to solve the problem. Next stage will be the construction work, the restoration of the stockel itself, and again, Derek has done a lot of work. He's talking to contractors. We're pretty clear on what needs doing, and he is coming up from some quotations for the work for us to have a look at. The other element, construction side, I suppose, but a separate issue, is the additional curbing that we think would be appropriate to running along the adjacent to the stockel from the lower reaches of Church Lane. So that is being looked at. We're starting to get an idea of costs now. I'm not going to say anything at this stage because it is still very much, we do need to do some more homework, but we will be very shortly applying for a grant from the community board. I think it's called the Local Area Fund, and we will be putting outline costs that we will have to substantiate at some stage. I think what I'd just like to flag up on that is that, as I say, I'm not going to give you any figures now, but I think obviously we're hopeful and I think reasonably hopeful that we're going to get significant grant funding for this project, but it will require additional resources, and those will either have to come from the parish council, from the precept funding, or possibly from somewhere else, who knows. But that will be a discussion for the future. But at the minute, we're gathering costs, and we will keep you all abreast. The other thing that we think is very important is that we keep our community advised, certainly when we get to the stage of works having to be carried out, be that TFB drainage, or the construction works, or the curbing, because it is an area of the village where it's very important that we ensure access to to the considerable number of houses below the stockel that are only accessible via Church Lane, but also just to allow our community to make alternative plans. So we did have a problem the other week when they started the drainage work, and I hope that we will be able to avoid a reoccurrence of that. Finally, just to briefly mention that myself and John Cragg are starting to do some local history work on it, and that's already starting to reveal some very interesting things, not least that there are actually 3 former holy wells within the parish boundaries of Chearsley, but you'll have to I'll leave you in suspense on that until John and I have completed our works. But I think it is going to be, I think, a very good project, and certainly something as a community that we should be looking to celebrate our heritage in a good and meaningful and considered way. So watch this space, everybody. Thank you.
Excellent. Many thanks, John.
A quick update on the bird watching. I started this morning. It was rather cold at 5:30 this morning, but plenty of blackbirds, blue tits, robins, but nothing that I could see thus yet nesting. So I'll do a bit more watching and should be in a position to give a definitive sort of answer by the end of this week.
Magic. Thank you, Ian. Important part of the whole exercise is making sure we're not disrupting wildlife there. So yeah, I mean it's great. It's the Stockwell project is starting to feel quite an exciting project for the village, and there will be a bit of short-term pain, as John says, undoubtedly, whilst the work is done, and it may look a bit rough for a while, but based on the plans that are emerging, it'll be superb once it's finished, and a real asset and credit to the village, I think. All right, okay, let's move on. Julia, have you anything for us?
Yeah, only just an update on the possibilities of a community library. I had quite a few emails actually with some suggestions for possible solutions or possible ways we could do that, including having a sort of a weekly book swap at the village hall, and also one that did reoccur, which is, I know, controversial, was the telephone box idea, which quite a few people emailed me about. So if it's possible to have that put on the agenda for the next meeting, I'm going to do some digging, find out what the situation is there, and also look at possibly how to fund an installation if obviously we discuss it as a council and we agree to go forward with that as a project.
Okay, so I just put on the agenda to discuss community library then for next month.
Yes, please. I mean, it seemed to be. It's good that the bus stop is back to how it was, but I think it probably is a good thing. I know there's a small one in the pub, but not everyone goes in there as often if they want to change books. And I think definitely the feedback I've had from the social media posts that we put out have been very, very positive about that as a probable as a good project for the village to use moving forward.
Thank you, Julia. I can't help noting that whilst you're talking about red phone boxes, Nick is looking up towards the heavens, probably saying thank you.
He hasn't got party poppers out, has he? Yes.
Was that you speaking there, Nick?
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Is that you?
Yes, it is me.
Oh no.
It's sorry about what?
That was an interesting little sound effect you created for us there.
No, it's been a nightmare of a day, but yeah. I'm actually calling you on Zoom on my Android phone, and I've got all your pretty faces.
Well, I'll tell you what, Nick, then, do you want to sort of come in and just say anything as a closing piece? I was going to make observations that this is, oh, actually, before I get to that, let me finish doing the round robin, then I'll suggest you come in.
Don't let me ruin it, John. Don't let me ruin it.
No, I won't, no. Martin, I've got you next on the...
Nothing from me.
Nothing at all? Okay. Paul?
Nothing from me.
Nothing from you either.
Apart from the no red phone box lobby.
We're going to have some interesting conversations here, I can see.
Keep Disney out of Chearsley.
Bound.
Let's go. Robert, did you want to say anything at all at this stage? No. Helen, have you got anything you wanted to add?
No.
No. Anthony? No, thank you.
No, I'm fine. Excellent.
Ian, anything more?
No, thank you.
Right, and nor have I. So thank you for that. So we now get to item 19. Nick, did you want to come in and see whether you can run this one?
I haven't got my agenda in front of me, so is that the one about councillors?
This is the vote of thanks.
Yeah. Well, I am delighted actually to be able to do that because I think it's been well known about my views and our own thoughts about us as a team. And I think the performance has been absolutely stunning over the last couple of years particularly, but beyond that as well, with what's been achieved in the village of Chearsley. And it's a great sadness in many ways that we're losing, at the moment anyway, two of our fine custodians of things in Chearsley, one being Martin Herman, our gracious flag raising man, and many other talents that he's got involved in over that time, as well as supporting the village hall in a big way. Not going far away, thankfully, and will be sorely missed. But finally, with one John Howard, who I've had the privilege of knowing for some years, and the work that John has done, I think we would all agree, as we have with Martin, has been absolutely stunning. And without the input that he's made to this village, we would be a poorer community, in my view, and I think our view. So I wanted to place on record my personal thanks as chairman, but also as part of the leadership group for this great parish council. And just to let people know, they're not going far away. Martin will still continually be roped into various events, I've no doubt, in this community. And I know that John has already committed to becoming one of our fine officers for the village, which will mean that we haven't lost him and we'll be getting lots more out of him in terms of probably roads and transport, but it allows him the opportunity of pursuing some other projects, mostly in the village, which is lovely. So that's it. Just a huge thanks to both of you. And there will be a private invitation, I'm sure, going out to join us at some stage for the belated Christmas party. And of course, the magnificent awards ceremony that is still deeply ingrained in my heart. So don't forget, I've not forgotten it. Well done, guys, and thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nick. Can I just invite all members to show by a show of hand a formal recording of our grateful thanks to John and Martin for all their services. Thank you very much, folks. All right.
I was just going to say, John, very, very, very briefly, can I just say from my side, I've enjoyed my years on the Parish Council immensely. There's been fantastic camaraderie, and certainly as far as I'm concerned, you know, the momentum has built hugely under your chairmanship, Nick, and I've been very happy and fulfilled to be a part of that. And yes, I do need to free up some more time for my own projects, but I have no wish to extract myself from the village, and I'm happy. I'll certainly very happy to take on, should you feel I'm appropriate to do it, project work. I'm already, I know I've got a couple of projects that are going to, you know, run over for a month or two yet, and also, you know, my other commitments to other organisations and events in the village. And perhaps I can just use this opportunity to remind everybody that we're all looking good for the classic car show on in September.
Brilliant.
And hot off the press, I heard from one of my colleagues on the committee today, we've already had 150 vehicles registered for the show. So put the 12th of Sunday, 12th of September in your diaries, everybody.
Yeah, wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
So thank you very much to you all. It's not a goodbye for me, as I know it's not from Martin, but I've enjoyed our comradeship massively in the last few years, and hope that will continue. I'm sure it will. Thank you.
Cheers. Thanks, John.
Thank you,
And
John.
if I may, I'd like to echo what John said in terms of thanks very much to Nick for his kind words, and to all of the rest of you for both your vote of thanks and for helping me into becoming a very inexperienced councillor to somebody who hopefully has made a contribution. Like John, I've thoroughly enjoyed my time with the council. I wouldn't have missed it for anything. I think Chearsley Council is an excellent example of what a council should be, rather than what they too often are. And I think that's down to a number of factors, including our excellent leadership, and as John said, excellent team spirit. I think it's a great council. I'm sorry to be leaving. As has been mentioned, I'm only going down the road to Haddenham, or that's the plan there at the moment. And I will be very happy to be called on for any duties that I'm able to help with if you feel like asking. So, I'm not intending to be a stranger to Chearsley, and I may well be turning up for the odd Friday evening down our local hostelry, and I'll be very pleased to discuss anything with anybody then. So thank you all.
Excellent. Thank you, Martin. Right. Okay. So drawing matters to a close then from, again, for everybody listening, you, if you weren't aware, you were probably starting to get the idea that this evening is a slightly unusual special meeting. And it is, in fact, the last meeting of this parish council. The next meeting will be the first meeting of the new council. That's the good news. The bad news is that, I'm sorry, folks, but the faces are going to look very much the same. So apart from John and Martin, who are leaving us, unfortunately, at least as councillors, the other 5 of us will still be here. And we will be joined by Angela Gray. We look forward to welcoming her to our number, and by a 7th to be determined, as mentioned earlier. The next meeting will be on the 17th of May. It will be the first meeting of the new council, and as such it will be an annual general meeting at which the chairman will be voted and the vice chairman. So Nick and I both stand down prior to that meeting as chairman and vice chairman respectively. We will also have on the agenda confirmation of appointment of officers. So my hope and expectation is that Anthony and Ian will be offering up their services for the new period. And we'll have John joining our officer strength. So in a sense, we go from strength to strength, and we're grateful to the village. One assumes that by not wishing to stand other candidates, that you are expressing satisfaction with the job that this council is doing.
Yeah.
So that's the 17th of May. The meeting after that, on the 24th of May, was a special meeting that we've got scheduled for the annual village meeting. Now, this is a mandatory annual event, but we are in 2 minds as to whether to go ahead with it. We had discussed this and decided, this was prior to the last meeting, discussed it and decided we would try and run it. We were going to try and run it virtually, the same as we do these meetings. We were subsequently advised that wasn't a good thing to do during the election purdah period, so we had to change our plans, put it in at a new date. With the change of the rules on personal meeting, that now throws into doubt whether we should or shouldn't hold it virtually. We can't hold parish council meetings virtually, but can we hold an annual village meeting virtually? We don't know. Helen, if you could check that in any way, that would be helpful, I think. But even if we can, do we want to? Do we even want a meeting? And I know that we have had some input from potential contributors saying that they're not at all sure that they want to participate this year. And there may be many others who feel the same way, given how close still the date is to the current delicate situation as regards the pandemic. So we're going to have to decide what to do about that. And again, I'm going to suggest that we talk about that offline and work out the best approach.
I agree.
John,
just to confirm, I mean, people like, I've spoken, as you're probably aware, I've had quite a lot of contact with the police lately, and you know, the Waddesdon, they're clearly not up for it at the moment. They've got so much else on their plate, and they don't feel as though there's anything other to comment on other than the stuff they've been involved in locally. But you know, those and others, the shop, and I think Sharon's had her hands full, and even more so now. And so I do think it needs a sensitive conversation to see whether this year is the right way forward.
Yeah. Okay, I completely agree. Again, probably a message to anybody listening: if you've got a strong view one way or the other, should we have an annual village meeting or shouldn't we? Assuming we have any choice on the matter, your thoughts and opinions would be gratefully received by the council. So drop us a note through to our email address. I think that's about it. Nick, you did ping a message through on a GDPR issue. Was that something you wanted to mention? I should have picked it up earlier.
Well, I'm just very,
Your sound's gone funny on
I'm
us.
just sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
No, I was just a bit concerned about an email that I've noticed circulating from a resident, which is actually rather dangerous because it's copied in about 55, 60 people, I believe. And it mentions things like not to do with the parish council, so hustings and county council stuff, and I'm just very concerned about it because it's going to be reported to the officer that controls or looks after GDPR, because it's basically gone out to people's emails all over the place without necessarily their permission. So if you have had a copy of that email, it's just to say it's been dealt with.
Okay, thanks for that, Nick. Good. Well, I think that's about it. All remains for me to say thank you to all of those listening or watching in the next hours or days. And thank you, colleagues, for your attendance this evening and over the last 6 years or whatever it is. And I look forward to meeting you all formally next month and almost certainly before then. So that's the end.